If you put the words Edmonton and amusement park together today, you're probably going to think of one place. One of the world's largest indoor amusement parks, Galaxyland at West Edmonton Mall, first opened its doors nearly 40 years ago, way back in 1983. When it opened its doors as Fantasyland, it was only about a third of the size as what exists at the mall today. It quickly expanded in the following years, eventually changed names, and recently announced a partnership with Hasbro for a reimagining of the park. So, with nearly 4 decades as part of Edmontonians' lives, Galaxyland and West Edmonton Mall itself is what comes to mind when thinking of Edmonton and amusement parks. But over those decades, it wasn't Edmonton's only amusement park. No, there was another. It was smaller, simpler, and a little rough around the edges, but it no doubt managed to find a place in the hearts of Edmontonians. Perched above the city's major thoroughfare, and right next to a couple of water towers, sat Edmonton's outdoor recreational facility, the Whitemud Drive Amusement Park.
I remember when I was the go-kart girl at Whitemud Amusement Park for about 8 years. Driving the carts, pulling the tires, pulling people out of the tires, holding a stupid sign that said no bumping. It was like my early 20s and I just wanted a fun job. I didn't want a real job. I'm gonna get tan and it's gonna be so great. I applied there and I got hired on the spot. It's like 15-hour days, you don't get breaks, and you're just dying in the heat.
The park first opened in 1985, only 2 years after its larger, more popular, and indoor amusement park cousin. And despite its existence as an outdoor facility in one of the most northern major cities in North America, it thrived. Even from the early days, when it only had 4 attractions. The first was Old Country Golf. The park's miniature golf course welcomed guests as they entered the main gates. Golfers would choose their favorite colored ball and set out on an adventure across 18 holes.
It was the original same course that was built when the park was built, and all that we ever did was repair certain things. We'd repaint in the spring, usually before the park would open, to try and make it look fresh. And I remember when I was on golf, I was the one who always had to leaf blow it every morning, and I hated it. But I'm making this job sound horrible, but it was my favorite job I've ever had in my life.
There were a variety of obstacles and decorations, from decorative rocks to path-diverting wishing wells. However, the course suffered from one major issue. With a few exceptions, many of the holes were exactly the same. From the tee, a slightly narrowed path, with a straight shot right to the hole, which was almost always placed dead center in the middle of a square. Yet, that didn't seem to matter. The course was a popular attraction for guests. Its fantasy-themed castles, frogs, loop-de-loops, gravestones, here lies Belle, she fell in a well, and other obstacles, when paired with the pleasant outdoor atmosphere, seemed to overcome any shortfalls it might have had.
I memorized that golf course to the point that nobody wanted to play with me because, once again, if nobody was at the park, we were using the park.
So you were a golf pro?
Yeah, but not at regular other places, only Whitemud.
Located directly across from the mini golf course was a large shallow pond, a perfect circle. It housed the bumper boat attraction. Colorful inflatable boats would carry riders around the pond, with the help of gas-powered engines.
The boats were always breaking down. The amount of times you had to pull people in because either a kid couldn't control the boat and they're spinning excessively, which I did as a child.
Ride operators would assist passengers into the boats, and then, with one foot on the outboard motor, pull the ripcord to get the engines going. Then, you'd be off, steering your boat across the pond to bump and splash other riders as best you could.
Boats is the worst, because not only are you alone, you're in a cage.
Due to safety regulations regarding the depth of the pond, the entire attraction was fenced in with tall chain link fence and barbed wire. No kid was going to slip and fall into that pool.
Almost every year, we had to reline the pool. It would rip or something. That was one of the most expensive things probably to maintenance at that park. I don't know if you're ever there in the beginning of the season to how nice and blue that pool water looked and how it looked near the end of the year where we would be like, oh, boats.
The third attraction which opened with the park was one of the first to close, the Video Arcade. It was located in the admissions and ticket building, and though small in size, it was a prominent feature at the amusement park through the 1980s and 1990s.
There was Daytona, I might have been Street Fighter, And then there was one of those brick dropping games where you could like get the things. There was like iPod shuffles. That shows how old I am.
However, it eventually did close over time, as many arcades did in the 2000s. But these 3 attractions, as nice as they were, well, they all played second fiddle to the main attraction, one which everyone was there to try: the 1,400-foot-long go-kart track. The park had an advertised fleet of 20 gas-powered carts. As one might expect, this number fluctuated over the years. There were carts for virtually every age range and skill level. Kids 10 and older could ride the GT Racer.
The GTs only went about 10 to 15, unless you had one that was like tweaked.
Physically larger riders, over the age of 14, could ride in a bomber.
The bombers went 30K.
And kids as young as 4 could ride too. They could be taken around the track in a Sidewinder cart, as long as the driver was 16 and had a valid driver's license. But if that same driver was riding solo, they could step up to the fastest kart on the track, the Bullet.
You had to have a valid Class 5 to drive the Bullets, and the Bullets were supposed to go 60, most of them went like 70, 75.
While all the karts offered a thrilling experience, the Bullets were the most intense. But regardless of which one you drove, any trek around the Whitemud Amusement Park's track was a good one. The park added additional attractions in the years after opening. There were smaller kiddie boats in their own dedicated pool.
They had the small bumper pool, which I remember when I was a kid, but we never used it. They'd fill it with water when it was really hot so kids could like cool down and stuff like that. But they weren't operating those boats. I guess they weren't that good of an attraction and like too high of a maintenance.
They also brought in kiddie rides. Near the park entrance, a colorful train ride. The Whitemud Express took children on a gentle jaunt around a relatively short track. Across from the train was a Bugs and Bees themed kiddie ride, along with a small Ferris wheel. As simple as these rides were, they did exactly what they were supposed to do: entertain the park's smallest guests. Though the highlight for many of the youngest visitors to Whitemud Drive Amusement Park was the opportunity to drive in their very own go-kart. Although they were slow and over the years became quite weathered, it didn't matter. Located directly across from the main admission building, young children would get a kick out of being able to steer their very own miniature go-kart around a small oval track. At least when they were able to.
Half the time the kids aren't strong enough to control the wheel, so you're like standing on the side of a go-kart and like doing the gas from the back and steering for them.
The park also brought in what grew to become one of their main attractions, aside from the go-karts that is: batting cages. A large chain link fence enclosure, complete with ceiling, encompassed the attraction. Multiple stalls were arranged side by side in a semicircular layout, each with their own set pitching speed and difficulty. Aside from a few community-based machines, Whitemud Amusement Park was home to the only batting cages in the city. They operated on tokens, which could be bought at the admissions center.
For the most part, they would get jammed up, so you'd have to like go up to the top on the ladder and like dig the balls out and not lose your arm in there at the same time.
Over the years, the Whitemud Drive Amusement Park cemented itself as a beloved entertainment destination for locals. Despite the seasonal operating season, the weather-dependent running hours, and the little rough around the edges condition of the park, it was a highly successful attraction. The 1,400-foot racetrack was even expanded, growing to a length of 2,200 feet.
Before I was there, they added one more loop. So when you would start, it had the few loops, so they added one more loop before it came around back.
Before the indoor karting attractions opened around the city, the park was the karting destination for thrill seekers. The park was so successful, there was even thoughts of expanding the space. But all of that ambition was soon tempered, with the announcement of the LRT expansion in Edmonton, which itself is kind of a long story. If you wanted to trace the journey which brought Edmonton's light rail transit system to Mill Woods, you'd have to start way back in the beginning, in the 1970s. The 1978 opening of the LRT in Edmonton marked a few milestones. It was Western Canada's first rapid transit system, and it was the first such system in North America to open within a city with less than 1 million people. At the time, less than 500,000 called Edmonton home. And the LRT was built just in time for Edmonton's hosting of the 1978 Commonwealth Games, which inspired another large addition to the city, Commonwealth Stadium, and its $50,000 washroom. Though Edmonton's original LRT implementation only operated between 5 stations, over the years it expanded, bringing new stations and adding new lines to the network, like the Valley Line, which is connecting Millwoods to Edmonton's downtown core. There were always plans to bring the line into the city's southeast, at least according to some original concepts, including those which envision the line coming down by Heritage Mall, then traveling east to Millwoods along 23rd Avenue. You have to remember, way back in 1981, there were advertisements outside of Heritage Mall claiming LRT coming soon. But regardless of which route the Valley Line would take to Millwoods, one fact remains the same. For all of the positives which come along with bringing the convenience of rapid transit to thousands of residents, there's always the other side of the coin, the downsides. One of the most visible, the disruption of existing residences and businesses. And unfortunately, the Whitemud Drive Amusement Park was one of those businesses. The land which it occupied was directly in the way of the proposed expansion line. Not only were the park's dreams of expansion squashed, but its very future was now in serious doubt. Early talks may have hinted at the possibility of relocation, but as time moved on, it became clear that there weren't really any options available, at least none which provided the benefits that the park enjoyed over the years. Being perched along one of the city's major thoroughfares not only provided excellent access to guests, but it also meant that the park really didn't have to advertise. Its large sign was visible to thousands upon thousands of vehicles which traveled along Whitemud Drive every single day. By the early 2010s, there wasn't a lot of prime commercial space sitting vacant in such a prime spot in the city. Certainly not a space large enough to accommodate an amusement park. And so, 2014 was the final season for the park. A farewell message was shared on their website. The land was being officially expropriated for the LRT expansion. Though the note mentioned they were still seeking a relocation option, it sadly never happened. And so, just one season shy of its 30th anniversary, the carts at Whitemud Drive Amusement Park took their final lap. The baseball bats cracked for the last time, and the last golfer completed the back nine.
I got the tattoo while I was there because I was like a reminder of like where I was and where I can go, and it was because of them. Because I was a gnarly 20-something-year-old just going too ham. But yeah, no, they were good. Like I ended up changing my whole life because of them. Yeah, like I don't know, it was a good place.
Looking back, the Whitemud Drive Amusement Park proved that it was the little park that could. That scrappy attraction which weathered decades of operation, and had the scars to prove it. But locals loved it all the same. Perhaps even more so because of its wrinkles. So, the next time you're driving by those big water towers on the south leg of the Whitemud, or cruising by the train yard on the city's newest transit line addition, stop and think back. Remember the batting cages and the bumper boats, the Ferris wheel, and the train ride. Remember the simple yet enjoyable game of mini-putt, and even the arcade and kids' boats, which both departed long before the gates closed for their last time. Remember Edmonton's best outdoor go-kart experience. Remember the Whitemud Drive Amusement Park. Did you get a chance to drive the carts at Whitemud? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. Give us a like and a share, and maybe even visit our Patreon page. And why not check out one of our other videos, mostly about the greatest indoor show on earth, West Edmonton Mall. Oh, and thanks for watching.